Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today let's go over a premium medium question in the database category that I just solved on my own. So I'm super happy about this and I'm very glad that I was able to come up with my own solution to this question without any assistance. So let's go over it and let me show you how I did it. So this is question 2394, employees with deductions. So basically you have these requirements for each employee has to work that many hours, right? And you just want to report the employee IDs that have not worked that many hours, that have not met the requirement in total, right? These are all the logs of times they have worked. So you can think of this as an interval where the out time has to be larger than the in time, and the amount of time they worked is the difference of the out time minus the in time, right? So pretty straightforward. So yeah, and let's go ahead and do exactly that. So let's create a default dict of type list. And let's go ahead and get the requirement. Let's call this needed. So for IE and enumerate employees, let's call this employee ID. So for the employee ID, they need to work at least this many hours, right? Needed hours of I. Okay. All right. So now let's go ahead and actually keep track of all the sessions or the log times the employee worked. So let's call this sessions, or let's just use this default dict that we already created. So for IL in enumerate logs employee ID, and let's go ahead and call this EID for better variable naming. And then let's just say needed of EID. We're just going to append the interval, right? Start and end. So let's call this start end is logs in time of I, logs out time of I, right? Cool. So 2 columns. And then now that we have these, basically, so what we can do is actually sort need EID because we're going to want the start and the end time. So yeah, so it just makes things more clean since we're starting from the earliest and the latest time at the very end. And then let's just go over. So this is supposed to be D instead of EID. Cool. So now let's just go over each key in the dictionary. Let's call this now, and let's print K and now. Okay. So, okay, let's just go ahead and actually create some kind of a dummy data frame just so we can actually look at the test cases we're failing. So it's probably a good idea. So we can work on this iteratively. Okay, cool. So it just makes debugging easier. So let's do this. All right. So, okay, so you can see that we have all the timestamps, and basically let's go over each interval, and let's call this difference is n1 minus n0, right? Because these are already date time. So the out time minus the in time are both pandas data frame types. So let's go ahead and print the difference, and let's also print the employee ID because that's going to be important. We're always going to want that. And you can see that we have days and then we have hours, right? So we don't care about days at all because we're just looking at this many hours, which is just this part is the hours. This is the minute. This is the second. So let's just call this C is going to be string diff dot split divided based on any of the white spaces. And then we only want -1, which is just this chunk, right? So let's go ahead and print K and C. So okay, cool. So now we have this chunk to work with, and it says here that if you worked 51 minutes and 2 seconds or any seconds at all, then we're going to round it up to 52 minutes. So if this has anything, even if it's 01, then we're just going to pop this guy. We're going to increment this guy. And then if this guy gets to 60, because there's 60 minutes in an hour, then we're going to increment the actual hours, right? And then we're going to add the hours and then see if this employee ID met the requirement in total or not. So no rounding, has to be clean, right? So because the rounding is what we're doing here already. Okay, so let's call this CC and let's do exactly what I just said. So just following the instructions here. So if, let's just call this cc is c.split based on the colon. So we want to divide it again. Let's print k and cc. Okay, so if cc of -1, if integer, meaning that it's any value above absolute precision of 0, then we're just going to say cc of 1 is equal to whatever this value plus equals to 1. We would do this if we could, but we can't because this is a string. So we're just going to turn it back into an integer, add 1 to it, and then back into a string. Okay, so let's print kcc. Okay, comma there. Okay, so here, let's look at this. This is a good example. Oh, cc, not c. Okay, so you notice that this turns to 4, right? Because there's obviously something here. 59 is bigger than 0. And then here, if this turns into 60, do the same thing here, right? So if int cc of 1 is bigger than or equal to 60, then what we're going to do, well, if it's exactly equal to 60, because we're only incrementing it by 1, at the worst case it'll be 59, right? And then in that case, we can just say cc of 0 is going to be string int cc of 0 plus 1. Okay, so same thing there. Okay, so now let's go ahead and print k and cc at the bottom here. Cool, so now we can go ahead and count how many minutes and seconds they have. So actually one more thing, since we already used this, then we're just going to set that to 0. So if that's the case, then cc of -1 is equal to string int of 0, right? And here, let's go ahead and do this. Just run it again just to see. Okay. And for this, so these are the hours, and then we also want the minutes, right? So let's call this total, and we're going to want to keep track of the minutes too, because any minute that is at least 60 is going to be one more hour as well. So there's 2 ways to increment that hour. This guy's sort of, whatever you want to call it, domino effect on this becoming 60, and then this becoming 60 by itself, if that makes sense. So cool. So now that we have that, we can basically just say, okay, so because there's 2 ways, we could do this at the end of the loop, or we can do it now. And so if this is going to be 4, so if this is 60, then this is incremented. We also have to do the same thing, right? String int 0. So we don't double count that 60. Okay, so now I think we can go ahead and just say, for this current, let's just call this hours and minutes is 0, and hours is going to be, well, we can just directly set hours to cc of 0 as an integer, because, for example, 08 is just 8 hours straight. And then for m here, m is just going to be int cc of 1, right? Okay, so if hours, so if minute is bigger than or equal to 60, then, like, for example, for, let's go here, at any point, if it accumulates to 60, which I don't think that's the case here, it's probably a bad test case. Okay, let's just go ahead and do that then. So if h is less than needed of k, then let's print k. So that means that we didn't meet the requirement, but the problem is we're not even done yet in total. So let's call this hour minute here. And because we've already accumulated some hours, let's just say hours plus equals to int cc of 0, m plus equals to int cc of 1. And then here, let's indent that to go here. Okay, so so because this indentation level is the total number, all the time worked for that particular employee ID. And then here, if m is ever bigger than or equal to 60, then h plus equals to 1, and m, right? So let's say m is 360. Well, if we use that many hours, then we're going to want to modulo this back to 60, which is going to be was going to be 0, right? So we're going to want to mod that back so that we have good numbers to round to. So 2 here. Okay, cool. So, all right. So now we're going to want to append this to answer. Let's create a list called answer. There's only one column in the result. So, okay. So, cool. Let's make sure indentation is correct. So let's go over this again, because sometimes this is not even in the logs and it has a requirement. So then obviously we didn't meet it, right? We didn't even try to work. Employee 3 never even showed up at all. So for, let's call this EIDs in employees, employee ID, and list, because this is like a data frame object. So if EIDs is not inside of our dictionary, because that's where we held the logs, right? All the logs of everyone, whatever they ever did. So then we can say answer.append EIDs. Okay, and then result set the only column employee ID equal to answer. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this. Okay, submit it. And there you go, passes all test cases. So again, I'm super happy that I was able to come up with my own solution to this question without any assistance and solve it completely on my own. So that's it for this video, and thank you for watching.